Morning, Marcy. I'm just checking with IT right now.
Okay.
We are live.
All right. We ready to go, Dr. Evans?
Yes, we are.
Would you please call the roll?
Sure. Dr. Blanton?
Present.
Dr. Bullock?
Here.
Dr. Dempsey?
Present.
Dr. Fleming?
Present.
Miss Edwards?
Present.
Dr. Graham? Dr. Houston?
Present.
Dr. Locklear? Dr. Marr?
Present.
Dr. Elliott? Dr. Penfield?
Present.
Superintendent Truitt?
Here.
Miss Carper?
Happy to be here.
Dr. Holland?
Good morning. Here.
Dr. Weddington, he's just running a tad bit late. Dr. Griffin?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
And Mr. Patton. We have quorum. Oh, here's Dr. Weddington.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome commission members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, and online listeners to the April 13th, 2023 monthly meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. This Standards Commission develops and recommends to the State Board of Education rules related to all aspects of educator preparation, licensure, continuing education, and professional standards of North Carolina educators. I am Van Dempsey, Chair of the Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, and I call this meeting to order. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website, www.ncpublicschools.org, on the SBE meetings link. The meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the e-board agenda. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Commission members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this commission. Does any member of the commission know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Commission members, you have had an opportunity to review the proposed agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda for the April 13th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion has been made and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes from our previous commission meeting on March the 9th, 2023 have been prepared and made available to you. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I move to approve the minutes. This is Randy.
Thank you. A second?
Second. Dr. Holland.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? There are no NCDPI or State Board of Education updates for the month of April. Now I want to discuss PEPSC standing committees for any upcoming work that may come before the commission. Standing commissions were established at the inception of PEPSC's work through the legislation, and these are a continuation of that structure. And I think, Dr. Evans, you were gonna pull up the legislation. There are 3 subcommittees that are part of this structure: educator preparation, licensure, and assessment and performance. These subcommittees were established earlier in PEPSC's work, and we convened these subcommittees for different purposes. When we began to do the work on the pathways document, the work of these subcommittees was set aside as we devoted almost all of our time in the meetings to that work. So we are doing a reset on reestablishing these subcommittees. The legislation you see before you that calls for the creation of the subcommittees. Dr. Evans has assisted me in identifying a chair for each one of the subcommittees, and these people have agreed to be chairs. For educator preparation, Hank Weddington. For licensure, Bill Griffin. And for assessment and performance, Randy Penfield. And Dr. Evans, I don't know if you can pull up the committee membership. People have that information, I believe, already, but the committee membership has also been established for each one of the subcommittees. Dr. Evans, are there any other details? We do not have business for the subcommittees at this point. That will be forthcoming. But Dr. Evans, are there any additional details or information we need to share at this point?
No, if anyone would like another copy of who is in their subcommittee, I would be glad to send that to them. And I'm sure that I'll be in contact with chairs to follow up.
Okay. Let me, Dr. Evans, I think for the record of the meeting, I'll run through the membership just so that's part of the meeting notes. For educator preparation, as I said, Hank Weddington is the chair. The membership includes Madison Edwards, Anthony Graham, Greg Smith, Leah Carper, and Eric Patton. For licensure, Bill Griffin is the chair. Membership includes Marcy Holland, Catherine Truitt, Chris Blanton, and Ann Bullock. Assessment and performance, Randy Penfield is the chair. Membership includes Sam Houston, Connie Locklear, Michael Marr, and Scott Elliott. And we'll make sure we get that list out to people so you have it. You have a email, you have a document that has that list available to you. Any questions about the subcommittees?
Hey, man, this is Ann. I just have a clarification question, or like a question about how logistically how it works. So are you saying that we're going to, I mean, we've had these on the books for a while, so are we going to initiate like things would go to the appropriate subcommittee before it would come to the big commission? I know it's a simple question, but I just thought I would ask for clarification.
Right. Yes, I think the intent of the subcommittees and the way they worked in the first iteration was specific areas of focus or issues would be taken to the subcommittee. The subcommittee would work on that issue and then bring it before the commission for discussion and consideration. Dr. Evans, that pretty much all three of the subcommittees work that way. And
yes,
yeah, those requests for reviewing particular topics or issues would be brought to PEPSC, and we would send that out to the appropriate subcommittee.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to, because that's not how we've been working recently, so I wanted to make sure everybody's understanding. Thank you.
Some of the topics would come up organically through PEPSC meetings, and then other things would be requested from the field or in legislation.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
We want to tell you about a very unique job that was filled today.
I think that was an errant. Kim, did you pick that up? I couldn't hear what that was.
It sounded like a commercial or a sales pitch.
Oh, okay. If there's no other discussion on subcommittees, next we will discuss the letter about the pathways work relative to the DRIVE task force, as was mentioned at the previous PEPSC meeting. You have all received a document that is coming before PEPSC today as information, and any initial questions or discussion people might have. But to remind people of the process by which this came to PEPSC, it was the letter, it came from the DRIVE task force. I'll say a little bit about DRIVE in just a second. The letter was submitted to the chair of PEPSC and was copied to the chair of the State Board of Education. For those of you who may need a little background, on December the 9th, 2019, Governor Roy Cooper signed Executive Order number 113, establishing the Developing a Representative and Inclusive Vision for Education, or DRIVE, task force, recognizing the positive impact of diverse educators on all students, and especially educators of color. I serve on that task force. Dr. Graham serves on that task force. There may be others now in the membership who are on that task force as well. On January 1st, 2021, the DRIVE Task Force submitted its final report from its initial phase of work, and the recommendations from that task force report then led to, in June of 2022, the DRIVE Task Force in its second phase publishing a plan to implement the DRIVE Task Force recommendations to increase the racial, ethnic, and linguistic diversity of North Carolina's educator workforce. After the June 2022 report and plan, the DRIVE Task Force then developed working groups that focused on different aspects of the work that was coming out of the DRIVE Task Force and the work of the subcommittees of the task force. As a result of that stage of the work, a committee that focused on policy implications for the work coming out of DRIVE put together what you now have before you as a letter from the DRIVE Task Force to PEPSC. The purpose of this letter is to highlight the positive impact that the Pathways proposal could have on teacher diversity and to identify opportunities to align the professional pathways structure we have been working on in PEPSC more closely with the DRIVE Task Force recommendations. While emphasizing the potential positives that this plan contains for teacher diversity, DRIVE continues to encourage PEPSC, the State Board of Education, and the General Assembly to keep teacher diversity and ultimately educational outcomes for students of color top of mind, and when implementing this proposal and other policies, programs, and funding to strengthen the educator workforce. Just very quickly, Dr. Evans, if you would just scroll through the document, DRIVE gives a background to the work that I just shared part of that. And then it includes specific components that are part of the Pathways work that we have been doing and the pilot area work that we did in the second phase of our work and what has now been recommended to the State Board of Education, including the compensation model and other parts. But you will also see, as you move toward the middle part and the end of the document, the pilot areas and the sections or the components of the work that we have been doing are referenced in the letter from DRIVE. The letter is a generally positive statement about the work that PEPSC has been doing and that we've done with DPI and with the State Board of Education in the development of the Pathways model and in the framing of the pilots. So it is good to hear that support from the DRIVE Task Force. They have submitted this to us for consideration and discussion. It is here today for information, and I believe most likely we will be discussing it relative to other aspects of PEPSC's work moving forward into the future. So I will be happy to pause there to see if there are any questions or comments about this letter now that it has been presented to PEPSC.
Dan, good morning. No questions, but I do want to, and I apologize for joining late. You did a beautiful job talking about the letter from the DRIVE Task Force. I just wanted to chime in and simply say that on behalf of the DRIVE Task Force, we are thankful that you are receiving the letter and acknowledging the letter in our meeting today. And I wanted to make certain that I acknowledge the DRIVE Task Force membership, particularly the policy subcommittee membership that worked on drafting this letter for the larger DRIVE Task Force, which then led to our consideration and submission of the letter to PEPSC. So I just wanted to make certain that I publicly acknowledged that subcommittee and the work that it did over a several month period of time to work on this particular communication.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. I'd like like to extend those comments. It has been an honor to be part of the Drive Task Force and the Executive Committee and to work with Dr. Graham and with all of the expertise and knowledge and skill and background that has been brought to this work through the task force. There hasn't been anybody who has been more central and critical to this to Dr. Graham. His leadership of the task force has been outstanding, and it's been an honor to work with him and the task force as we have gotten to this point. I also strongly encourage people to spend some time reading this because it does give insight and access into the work that Drive has been doing and why that work is important for the state of North Carolina, for the teaching profession, and for our students and children. But it also helps to support and identify the strengths of the work that PEPSC, DPI, and the state board have been doing over the last couple of years relative to the Pathways Initiative. And I think the two bodies of work complement each other in important and critical ways. So thank you, Dr. Graham, for your leadership and for your comments.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I do want to recognize Kim Evans is also a member of the Drive Task Force.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments at this point about the document?
Mr. Chairman, this is Aaron Fleming.
Yes, sir.
A question for you or Dr. Evans or probably Dr. Graham. Do you know if a copy of this letter, as you know, our work has been sent on and is with the state board and ultimately, I guess you could say, being advocated on behalf of DPI and the state board to the General Assembly. Would it assist the Drive Task Force if they were to also send this to key education lawmakers, or because as I have looked through it, I think a lot of it, if not all of it, is very good. And I know it might be a little late for us to work on some of these with the pathways. Some I think we probably could work on immediately. But really, I guess my question is just around, could this be something that was sent to lawmakers as well?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dr. Fleming. I will share with you that we did send the letter in addition to PEPSC. We did send it to the State Board of Education. So that's the extent of where we've disseminated the letter to date per the decision of the task force itself. We have not had any additional conversations about expanding the dissemination of the letter, but that's something we certainly can tackle in our next meeting in May and see what the temperature is among that body.
No, that's great. The state board may be the most appropriate. I just say that because I know since we've sent a lot of ours on, now that I look over this, I reflect back on a couple things and say, okay, I see where this is, very appropriate, and maybe things that have been considered or weren't considered. And so that may be good as well. But thank you, Dr. Graham.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question. And Dr. Graham, I agree, and we can go ahead because I also co-chair the subcommittee that worked on the letter. We can definitely put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Perfect.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Lastly, I'd like to provide an update about the Pathways work that has been before PEPSC and what has occurred since our recommendations to the State Board of Education at our February meeting. I'm going to share a few components of that process. We made our recommendations to the State Board of Education. I presented those recommendations in the meeting to the State Board at their early March meeting, and the State Board of Education considered those recommendations from us on the Pathways work and the pilot briefs that we submitted to the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education, in consideration of that, has created a set of requests relative to that work, and you see that document before you now that was considered and approved, adopted by the State Board of Education at the March meeting. That includes, I'll share 4 summary comments about the document. You have the document as part of the information for this meeting, but the recommendations by PEPSC at the February 16th, 2023 PEPSC meeting were positively received by the State Board of Education at their March meeting. As a result of the March action, the state board submitted to the General Assembly request to initiate the piloting process, and the State Board of Education, the superintendent's office, have been working on that process. That document, as I just said, is posted for this meeting for your review and access. General steps forward are noted in the state board request document from that meeting, the March meeting, including a list of additional items that need to be in the pilot legislation. Dr. Evans, if you would scroll to the second page, that is that section. I'll not read those to you now, but I do encourage you to look at those subcomponents of the document because they're important in terms of understanding the direction that this work is now taking relative to moving the work of the Pathways effort and the pilot components forward. Those discussions have been initiated by the state superintendent and by the State Board of Education chair for consideration in preliminary planning and preliminary fiscal analyses that may be necessary for potential pilot implementation action. And we will continue to update PEPSC as we get additional information as this continues to develop and we start to see the work move forward. I'll pause there to see, I know Dr. Truitt is on the call. You may have comments, but if there are any questions or comments by the commission.
I think that was a great summary. Thank you. But happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the pilot development and the pathways, continuation of the pathways work? Hearing none, and if there are no other questions or comments, thank you, commission members, advisors, and staff for your preparation for the discussions today. I remind commission members that our next monthly meeting will be held virtually on Thursday, May the 11th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have now completed our meeting, and unless there is additional business at this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all, and we will defer back to you the remainder of the time scheduled for this meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Chair Dempsey.
Take care, everybody.